This is Too Long for a Voice Note, a podcast about everything and nothing at the same time, presented by Claire
and Enzo. Our podcast is produced in London. Some conversations are just too long for a voice note.
Hi, she's Claire.
And he's Enzo.
This is Too Long for a Voice Note.
Hello!
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of your favorite podcast in the whole world.
Too long for a voice note. Before we get into it, please remember to like, subscribe. We are available on Spotify, Apple, and now even Amazon Music. So literally everywhere, and also
everywhere.
YouTube. And please remember to leave us a review on Spotify because it really helps to support the podcast.
Yes, so thank you very much, guys. And yeah, before we start with the episode, also like a little reminder that we create like a Just Giving page to support everyone's affected by the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. So please, if you can donate and you can help, that will be really amazing. You can find the link. Well,
we're going to leave a link in the show notes
also
so you can find it
on
there.
our socials.
Yeah,
but whatever you can, it has to be like. I mean, you can donate for any part of the world, so it doesn't have to be in pounds. It could be whatever's your currency, even if it's like £5 or whatever your currency, that would help a lot. So it would be really nice to like help, try to help in the situation from our privileged position.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. Well, thank you to everybody who has donated as well.
Can
Back for another episode.
Yes, can you give us a little update about your life, Claire, to kind of get our listeners into the zone and not to just time them with the episode, like, like, what's up with your life lately?
Well, I recently froze my egg.
Yeah.
That's a big update. So
really important, big update. Honestly.
Really big update. So I think you guys know because I mentioned it on a previous episode. I had a surgery for my endometriosis. I think we're going to do an episode on endometriosis. We said we'd like to do an episode on egg freezing as well, because
really
who knew? I don't think any of us knew anything about egg freezing before I started this journey. But
literally like mind blowing.
It's sci-fi. It's really sci-fi.
It's really sci-fi. Like,
but yeah, I got an amount that I was happy with, which was really good.
And they're all in the freezer.
They're all in winter wonderland.
Winter wonderland.
Oh my babies.
That's really great. It's really like shocking how like the technology. I mean, it's been going for a while, but I still feel really. I mean, like this exists for a while. Like,
yeah, it did. Definitely have.
But it's still like really surprising. And I think it's not something that it's out there all the time or you hear a lot.
It's true.
So kind of like hearing from you and all the details, it's kind of like, whoa. Like,
definitely. I think women's health in general, right? We don't really hear a lot about it. And I think also doing egg freezing, I think, is quite privileged. So I think it's normally celebrities that we hear about doing this. And you don't really get it from like a regular gal point of view. So I'm going to hopefully be creating some content about it for my Instagram.
Of course.
Let's.be.claire.
Yes. Please just like, subscribe as well.
And we'll do an episode as well about it. But
really cool.
But yeah, I'm really happy with it. Yeah. But that's been really the last 2 weeks, to be honest.
Amazing start of the year, honestly. It's like, get it done.
They were frozen in Pisces season, which is so cute. So I was really happy.
We're talking about that because if there were like I don't know, fecundated? What's the word for that? Fecunded?
You mean like if they were fertilized, basically?
I don't know, I'm translating the word in Spanish. It's like
fecunded.
Fecunded.
It's like I'm gonna get
fecunded. Like fertilized in this month, it will be Sagittarius, so that makes so much sense.
Little Saggy babies.
How much sense? So there are all those babies, I think they have the Sagittarius and Pisces energy there.
How cute!
How cute is that?
And my doctor was Venezuelan. I was so happy. Honestly, I couldn't believe it.
It's kind of like all the stars align.
All the signs.
The baby's gonna come out there like, yes, arepa,
Venezuela.
So honestly, it's really like, without jokes. That's really impressive and crazy. We had like a lot of things in the middle of everything. We had a lot of like parties and celebrations and things to do. So it was quite active month. So it's kind of
gone. It was active and short month.
Yes.
The shortest month of the year, in fact.
It is, Claire, for clarifying that.
It is the shortest month of the year.
We didn't know that before. Thank you, Claire. You always learn new things with us here, guys. You're welcome. But indeed.
Well, it's your week this week, right?
It's my week, yeah. So
time for
Enzo's secret topic of the week. So, my topic this week, I want to talk about something that we may discuss over voice notes, no surprise, a few weeks ago, I think. But I want to talk about something like, I think it's quite interesting topic, and the more I reflect on it, I find it more interesting. I want to talk about like men being vulnerable.
Okay.
And how that works in this society, and how that plays a part in the society of how we are and how we react to it. Because I think and this idea for this topic came from all this whole drama that happened with Prince Harry book.
Oh, okay.
The memoir.
Yeah, the memoir.
Like, what's the name of this?
Spare.
You know, it's like Spare. I think, like, drama and like polemics and like it's whatever aside of that, if you like or not the royal family, or if you're interested in that, or if you really care about him or his life, I think what I found really interesting about this whole book release and promotion campaign, it was the response of a lot of people on the way he communicated everything that happened in his life, the way he expressed himself, and how open and vulnerable he was on this book and on his interviews. You know, I read a lot of things like, you know, people kind of saying like, oh, you are like a prince, you are like a military guy and all of that. How can you be so weak? How can you be a pussy? I read a lot of like, well, internet, you know, is like a black hole of comments and then negativity as well. But I read a lot of comments, even coming from women, a lot of women saying like, oh, you're like a disgrace of a man, that's so weak. How can you be like that? Basically, people were like condemning the way, kind of like, yeah, they were like, not thinking that's the way a man or like a real man, air quotes, should act or behave, because it was too vulnerable, too soft, too open. And that made me think a lot about that, because I think we've been explored this topic before briefly, but this has like a interesting connotation, and made me think like how like as society we kind of like deal with that and how we accept that.
Interesting.
How do you feel personally when a man maybe is too vulnerable, or how's been your experience when a man is too open and like, let's say, soft, and the contrary as well?
I think it's interesting. To be honest, I think at times I have felt quite uncomfortable. Like I think that I remember seeing like certain male members of my family cry, like when a loved one has died, for example, and I have noticed like an internal reaction of feeling quite uncomfortable. But I think the more I kind of see that, the more you get, and I think it purely comes from a place of like not being used to that. Like it's obviously really vulnerable. I think one of the most vulnerable things that you can do with somebody is actually cry. Like I think that you're often like a relationship like takes a turn when you cry in front of somebody, because it's like so, especially as an adult. I think when you're younger, you're probably like, you see your friends cry in school and over nothing and blah blah blah. But I think when you're an adult and you cry with somebody, it's like, oh my god, like I remember the first time I cried in front of you. I really had like like I felt like some like a shame in a way, because I think you're not used to like, I wasn't used to that, but obviously it was completely fine.
Now that I mentioned crying, like I was reading some articles online, and I was like reading this one in particular that I found really interesting. It was written by Raquel Van Loon, I guess that's how it's pronounced, sorry if not Raquel. But the article was called How to Create Safety for Men to Feel Emotional Vulnerable. So kind of like, how can we do to make what things can we do to make men feel more comfortable to do it, right? And one of the things like she mentioned is like we live nowadays in a society that we use expressions like "man up." It's like a really like expression that we use all the time, or like "stop crying and be a man," or like we're "suck it up," like be strong. And actually, she mentions here like, you know, like even like with grief, like men are not allowed to express grief in the same way, because they need to be strong, and they need to be, or they need to show some
like holding
strength.
It in, basically. Like
basically
holding it in.
Hold in everything, because you are the man, and that creates like a lot of issues. Like for example, she mentions like the men rates of suicide are way higher than women. It's like crazy how like it happens more often when a man decide to kill themselves than a woman, because obviously it's so many things that are trapped there. And I find very interesting because she points something here that I found like actually something I thought before but didn't connect it with directly maybe, but it was about the whole gender role play and how, like, for example, all this, she was kind of to track him back where this come from.
Interesting.
And she was mentioning like this comes from even from when women are pregnant. Okay. So when a woman is pregnant, like we have like a gender reveal. So if it's a girl, you wear pink. If you're a male, you wear blue. And from there, there's like such a social element that says if it's a boy, you can let them wear pink. That color is feminine. From that statement is where everything starts, because you're already saying like something is weaker or not good for men.
Yeah.
So you won't ever able to wear like a boy to make him wear pink.
Yeah,
so she was going to all of these kind of like little connecting dots about where it comes from, and I think it makes totally fair. It comes from also like toxic masculinity and all of that, and like misogyny. Kind of builds up to the point like when we grow up as men, we have all these messages all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like where you can probably speak to that more than I can, because you were like raised male. So it's sort of like I think it has to obviously happen in childhood, right? That maybe because you've got to assume that like little boys and little girls like experience the same emotions. Yeah. It's just something happens along the way, and that's all it is, that you're discouraged from expressing emotions. Something that I thought of that I think there's something about like how you would typically say that men are more angry than women. And I think that truly, like, it's not really like a groundbreaking thing to say, but I think that truly comes from like, because if you take it that men and women have the same emotions, I don't think that we have like we don't experience emotions in a different way. Okay, we may experience emotions in a different way, but we both sexes are like vulnerable to the same emotions.
Human experiences.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. Human experiences. Yeah. So if there has to be a way, so if girls are taught like it's okay to cry, which by the way, like crying is really therapeutic. Like there's a reason why we cry. Like that releases stress hormones. So that's a reason why you feel better after you cry.
But that's why women are often more like they have more tools to kind of like confront things.
And also like typically women will talk to their girlfriends, for example, or like because it's so fucked up when you think about it. And boys, if they're still experiencing those emotions and they're told like don't cry, keep it in, like it's no wonder why like men become more angry or more violent, or there's more like misogyny and everything, because it's like what happens to those emotions. So I think that's why it's so key that we encourage kids to be vulnerable, boys to be vulnerable.
Honestly,
as well.
I think it's kind of this thing that I always say, like being a man and being a straight man is kind of living in a cage, because you have and not to make anyone like, oh my god, poor man, and blah 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 blah. But it's part of that. And what I found interesting about it is like everyone needs to care about the situations, because as always say, like it's not about women or being men. It's like feminism needs men to also to prosper, and the other way around. Men need women for them to feel more comfortable and more like secure as well, to feel this, to kind of construct this, because at the end it's all like a bunch of ideas and a bunch of like concepts and things and like concept we put on humans. But at the end of the day, like why their experiences have to be different with emotions, right? Have you when you're being with friends, or I guess like partners, and there's men and they were men, have you seen them? How you seen like? How can I put this together? Like,
have I seen them like express emotions,
or what is the most common thing you have seen a man struggling with when expressing emotions? Even if it's me, for example, any of your friends, or like your partners or ex-partners, whatever. Like, what do you think is that thing that you see? It's like the common thing that struggle the most.
I think that there's like a big like common thread even between like friends and like male friends and male partners and male family members. It's always like this element of avoidance. I think that will be it. I think that I notice with men in my life that it's always like avoiding like the plague, like bringing something up, because I think I don't know, but I would think that comes from a place of not having the tools to know how to do that, or like if you don't do anything in life, it's really hard, so you avoid it. It's like working out. Like if you don't work out, like the last thing you want to do is go and work out, because it's painful. You know. And I think it's the same with like expressing yourself emotionally. Like the more you do it, the more easy it becomes. So I think what about you? What would you say?
Her for president. I think and I see this between my friends, between myself, or every like partner, every man I have met, whatever. I think it's really difficult for men to like accept they're wrong. It's really difficult.
Oh yeah, that as well.
It's kind of like, it's so hard for men, for us to say like, yeah, I'm wrong, and it's part of that, I guess, because men are supposed to be right, because men are supposed to be the ones who take care, they are like in charge. And also it's very toxic, because the fact that you're in charge of something doesn't mean that you cannot be wrong.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
And it's kind of like, even like, and it applies to every single other thing in life. Like we always think like, even if it was the case, and even if man has to be in charge and be in power, even if that's the situation, you're allowed to be wrong, and you're allowed to break, allowed to say like, oh yeah, I did that wrong. So I think that would be the most common thing.
I think actually kind of tagging on to that, and it's kind of going it back to our last episode about apologizing, but adding to that, I think I was reflecting on that episode, and then just based off of what you said, I think, when men, like, say you're in a relationship with them, or like it's a friend, and they like manage to say I'm sorry, because they've like managed to say I'm sorry, which is great, but then that's like, okay, we're really good now, right? Like we never need to speak about this again. And actually, like, you can apologize, but it still might not change anything still, or you might, because we said in the last episode, like, it might mean the end of a relationship, but it might also not mean the end of a relationship, but it might also mean that you need a bit of time to like for it to scab, but then men are literally like, well, I've done the thing, what the hell, and
it's so interesting you're bringing this up, because while I was reading all of this, I found also an article which was another perspective about men being vulnerable and like what that means. Vulnerable. What's a complicated word? Vulnerable.
Vulnerable. What is it in Spanish?
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
I mean, it's actually the same, but it's the same. But how you say?
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
But I think that's a hard sound, right?
Yeah.
Vulnerable.
Like
vulnerable.
It's like, I know I'm not saying it properly, but she will say it properly. Vulnerable. Why is it so difficult? Because I've never said it. Funny enough, I found this article while I was doing all this research and trying to see like what was out there about it, not to leave it only on my interpretation. Yeah. I found this article by these women called Pravina Rudra, and she wrote an article called "Stop Fetishizing Men Being Vulnerable." So she was going into a rant, like we should stop like being like, oh my god, man, you're being vulnerable, you're being emotional, you're so good, clap, clap, clap. Obviously, I think she was reading this from a place of like, maybe a bit of hurt. Maybe she has like a really bad experience. This part of being the good guy or being apologetic is kind of turning into something that sometimes can be a bit dangerous. To explain this a bit more, she's saying something, for example, like often happens that instead of being like apologetic or trying to explain their emotions, they're just trying to shift the pain to you.
Okay, so in what way? Like, give me an example.
She said, like, in a lot of these cases, like, they are not actually taking like entitlement of their emotion. They're not dealing with their emotions, so they're basically shifting to the other person. For example, she mentioned that a lot of men, they have this like, and I don't know if it's a new. I felt the way she explained it is like a new thing that it's happening now, with this new openness from men, where men feel like they have this green flag to be really, or this like open space to be really honest, and they're actually being very rude. So basically it's giving them chances to be cruel to you in the name of being honest and in the name of expressing their emotions. Yeah. So she mentioned like there's a lot of like threads in Reddit, for example, that are talking about this, or like she mentioned like there's a Taylor Swift song, for example, that talks about it, saying like, oh, he was so casually cruel in the name of being honest. Okay. So that's something that's it. And she said, for example, like even there's a cult account in Instagram called Beam Me Up Soft Boy, which is a whole account which is just a screenshot of messages from men who use their emotional openness to hurt women.
That's so interesting.
And it became like a whole thing in the dating experience, millennial experience. So from this I was thinking, like, did this ever happen to you? Like maybe a man being like, oh, I'm just being honest, or I'm just trying to express my emotion, and they're just plain hurtful, and they was just not actually being knowledgeable of it, because I think it's the difference between being like, oh, I'm open, it's kind of like, I did this wrong, I really don't feel that what you're doing is right to me, you're hurting me, than just putting the blame to someone else and saying like, oh, you're a piece of shit and you're doing, and I want you away from me. You know, like, did it happen to you? Like, maybe like a man react that way? Like, instead of like apologizing, it was very like rude in the name of transparency. It's really delicate because if we want men to be more open and emotional and vulnerable, but I think because we're in such a shaky ground and we don't know what means, or a lot of men, they don't know for them what it means to be like that. So
I know
maybe,
what you mean.
so maybe if they are like being actually rude and not like understanding your emotions, maybe they are kind of like, oh, but I'm being real, I'm being open, I'm telling you how I feel.
I know what you mean. Actually, I have had a case like that. I've had a case of that, dating somebody who basically said, oh, I'm just trying to be honest.
Yeah.
But it was like, he was an arsehole anyway. But you know, it's like, you don't need to be like, it's so mean to be such an arsehole. And I get what you're saying. And I think, but I still would say that that's a tactic. I don't know, but maybe that's me coming from it as like as a woman.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is like, oh, let's give like fucking like 32-year-old men a chance to like get it all. Do you know what
I wonder
mean?
if from his word, and if he has this conversation with someone, he will be like, oh, that girl was crazy, was just trying to be honest. They ask us to be open and honest, and when I do it, they think that we are
100%.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And I think that would be, and I think this is where
I get you.
Pravina Rudra comes from, like some like, which is also like maybe it's a negative outlook of the situation, of course, but I think it's interesting to put that on the table as well because again, a lot of men, they don't have the tools to be open or different or better because like we grew up with certain set of things and maybe you're not exposed to the right things or maybe you haven't.
It's true, but I think I would push back at that, to be honest, because it's like none of us have a lot of tools. Like I didn't have a lot of tools to be in a healthy relationship, neither did you. Like sometimes you're not modeled the best things, for example, in your childhood, but like I understand that like for a lot of men it's difficult to express emotions, but like when does it become your job to learn how to do that? Because I know a lot of men, like yourself included, who have learned how to process emotions and deal with those things, so therefore it's a skill that can be learned because we all have to learn things. So I kind of would say I don't buy it that it's like this kind of like, oh well, men are, and I know this is exactly the problem because I know, but I think maybe like it's an age thing, right? And maybe when you're a bit younger, like there's a bit more room for forgiving, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally get you. I know, like, I don't know where to stand exactly with this, and it makes me think a lot, and that's why I'm thinking a lot about this topic, because I think I've been lucky enough in many ways to have, like, I mean, the fact that, I mean, you may say, a lot of people say, like, well, being gay is not exactly being lucky, because it comes with a lot of situations and issues, depends on where you live as well, but I think in my, like, situation, in my reality, actually being gay actually helped me a lot to develop myself and my emotions, because I can have my other gay friends, for example, that could be as open, feeling as open. I can have like friends like you, and as a man, I feel 100% comfortable to express my emotions and be open with a woman, which I think for a lot of straight men that's not the case, because they don't have these spaces. And this is like where do we create these spaces? This is a lot of this is like, we need to change.
I know what you mean.
We need like to talk more about these things, because I think like if you, and I don't want to like being a cliche of a concept, but if you are a straight man, you like to watch football, and just the only thing you do is going to the pub to watch football with your friends and drinking over beers, it's a bit difficult to, in which, you know what I mean? In which moments or where, in which scenarios you will be
with your girlfriend. That's it, literally.
With your girlfriend,
like that's, I believe, that's the majority of where straight men get their emotional connection.
Which is a lot to be for a girlfriend, because then the girlfriend has to be like also like kind of like a therapist, so kind of like, oh, I'm gonna help you in your journey. It's like, okay, well, you know what I mean.
And also, it's sort of like that can create a lot of tension in the relationship, and it's like definitely. I think that's the thing, and I think that's where typically, to talk in generalizations, like straight women, again, it's about friendship. I think that's a massive thing, because I think like women tend to have a lot of friends or more friends. Gay men tend to have a lot of friends, or you know, more. We both, those groups tend to be able to like reach out more, like,
because we're more open, or we try to be more open.
Yeah, it's difficult, I think, because where do you go? I mean, tell us, if you're a straight man, where do you go?
Obviously, if you really want, or maybe if you have like certain like childhood that your family were very open, maybe you will know like, okay, well, maybe I go to like different scenarios. Maybe I go to therapy. Maybe I can be open with friends that I have. Maybe instead of going for a beer and watch a game, and say like, oh, let's go for a coffee.
Yeah.
But in this society, that's a situation. It's not, and I think that's something that probably is changing, but it needs to change more, because then
Definitely.
and I think also that's the new generation. We're gonna have less and less of that. Hopefully,
I think so.
If the next like babies that come to this world being like, they're giving more tools, especially men, I think that will be a different story. But yeah.
Are there do you have any tips from your research about, because you mentioned the safe space?
Actually, now that you mentioned that, Claire, going back to Raquel Van Loon, it's a bit of like extensive, it's not like a extensive list, but it has a lot of like, obviously, each point is a bit, like obviously it's a bit tense, so we're good to, if anyone is interested to read it, we're gonna put it on the comments, so you can check the article. But she has some tips, as for example, like we need to go things like the refining of strength, like what means to be, what strength means being a man,
so true.
And like stop the false assumption that power equals strength. That's a really good point that she mentioned, to kind of like move from this. And this can be changed to repetition and positive reinforcement, no shaming. If a man is displaying whatever it's called being weak, you don't say like, oh, don't be weak, this type of things. Again, she mentioned another good point: stop shaming men when they want to be vulnerable. Just be done, because it seems stupid, but in culture that's how it works. You watch a movie and they make fun of the man when he's being vulnerable, when he's being like soft, or he's being like caring or whatever, so it's part of that. Another one, create safe spaces. Like, what are the safe spaces for men? That's an interesting thing.
What about in your relationships? Do you expect a level of that? I mean, obviously you go into it person by person.
I do, yeah, but I have not always find it, even though if it's like a gay man. So it's not like, I think being gay, it helps. It has like some type of, I don't know, you have a different set of tools to work with, but it's not given, You're still being, you grow up as a man, you're still being as a toxic masculinity, you're still being put all those things on top of you.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
Even if you were rejected by your family, even worse, because it has more and more layers to it. One of the last things I read about this, it was from the
Huffington Post.
Huffington, because I always read like HuffPost.
HuffPost, Huffington Post.
From this man that I believe is like a psychologist called Davis Feinblum. It's very interesting names today in this article. It was my intention. So Davis Feinblum, he was this. Hi, David.
Hi, David.
Also, why he's calling Davis and not David? I have questions.
Or is it David?
Davis.
Oh, Davis.
Davis Feinblum. So, hi, Davis.
Hi, David.
So, this was because this was kind of his analysis from the going back to Prince Harry. Circling back the situation. and because, a lot of people were saying also like, oh, he was oversharing. And like, he was going into this topic, so like, oh, well, okay, men are not allowed to share, and when they share, they're oversharing, so he should keep things for himself. So, I want to ask you, like, not into going a lot into what he's saying, but what, have you felt sometimes, like, a difference, or like, you sometimes, if you want to be vulnerable, or you want to share what you feel, happens to you, like, you feel you are being, oh, I'm just being vulnerable, this is very healthy, this is really good for me and for my people, or have you felt like you are oversharing, or you are, what's for you that, like, thin line, where do you feel like it happens to you, that you're like, oh, I'm sharing too much, I'm oversharing?
Oh, definitely. I think definitely, like, the term, like, emotional hangover is something that I often think of, that I think...
It's connected to kind of that, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it happens to me less and less now, because I think maybe the older I've gotten, the more, and thanks to therapy, the more comfortable I've been expressing in a way. The vulnerability thing, it's like that thing of like you put something out and then you're hoping that the person's gonna like reach you there as well. But I always think like if they don't, like with your friends or with a partner, like if they don't, then it is.
Because you're also doing it for your mental health, right? And for your own sanity as well.
One thing I will say though is that as like a little tip takeaway, and I think this kind of goes with this, that's something that our friend Leah, what me and Leah do, which I really value, I think I haven't shared this before because I say this all the time, but one thing that we actually do is say, are you in the place to hear this? Like, are you in a good place to have like me emotionally dump on you, for example, really because sometimes life's heavy and you're like busy living your life, running around, working, blah blah blah,
boom.
And exactly. It's like fucking hell, Claire. It's like 12:30 on a Tuesday. Like, I didn't want to hear about your childhood trauma.
I think we do it though. Maybe
we do.
I think now maybe we should be more healthy.
We're literally
like 1 a.m. 1
a.m.
5 minutes. It's like I was thinking about this really bad thing. We're like, oh yeah, maybe we should do it more. Actually, I think it's really good that you and Leah do it because it's a really healthy thing.
I think it's really healthy, and I think it really helps because we have had times where we've said like, you know what, like I love you, I'm here, but not right now.
Really
like
important.
Give me until the evening when I'm at home and I've had a shower and blah blah blah. I just don't want to do it when I'm out, you know, like. And I think that's something that's helped.
You don't want to do it at that moment because you're not feeling in a good position to like maybe reply or like giving actually like a good feedback on it.
And I think that can also help you to sit with it if you're the one saying it, you know, like
definitely.
So that's one tip that I would give. How about you? Do you find it hard?
Yeah,
sometimes?
I think now less definitely, but I think I can think before it was really hard for me to express what I feel definitely. And I think that comes from the experience of being just a man, you know, and I don't know, coming from Latin America and blah, blah, blah. Even though my background, we have, you know, Italian background, it's a bit difficult. I haven't seen a lot of like expression, a lot of emotions being expressed around the men around me.
Oh, yeah.
But I think I got like a balance with my mom and maybe my brother, because my brother also is very expressive.
Yeah.
So I kind of like I got that balance and like a point of reference. But I think it took me a while for me to feeling just like, oh yeah, it's okay to sharing what you feel. You know, it was not like a common thing for me because maybe I was feeling like a whole oversharing. I was like, I shouldn't say this because maybe you should keep it. It's that thing of you should keep it for yourself.
Yeah. Nobody
needs to like know it. Nobody needs to like hear that, which is the contrary, you know, like. And I think men more and more need to do it because the world is moving fast and we need to like catch up with times and I think we have more and more tools every day and we just need to put into practice more.
Definitely. There are two things I was wondering about. I know we need to wrap up this topic, but I was wondering if like you and your brother are both creative. So I wonder if there's something about that. And also you are very close with your mum.
Yeah.
And I think
100%.
you can... It's really bad in a way because I think it's like, why do you need to have like a good... But I guess it can be the same way with a girl and a dad, for example. But it's like you can tell that you're close with your mum because you're right. There's just something that, and you are, and it's, you know.
Right. Yeah, you're so right because I think I have seen like in other like family groups that the situations are a bit different, and I can see how other people that are struggling more than me to express what I feel. So, and I think it's kind of connected to things like that, to relationship with your mom, how it is, or your dad, how it is, how they wear, how are your, if you have siblings, how it is, or what you like, or the way you express yourself, it kind of helps your path as well.
That's the thing, because I think also like being creative, like say, in your brother's case being like a poet, it's like, and being a photographer as well, it's like you are basically expressing your emotions in a form. That's what you're doing. So it's like you have to be a little bit at least emotionally available. It's so 100%. I think it's always bubbling in the background.
It's kind of like an extra tool that you have regardless of like, well, it's like your background as well, but it's true. I agree.
Super interesting topic, love.
Thank you, love, for sharing this with me.
Do you know what I would love to do one time? This is obviously impossible, but I would love to like live a day as a straight man. how I would be like, wow,
How great
like
that
because
would
obviously
be.
everybody experiences emotions differently.
True,
but generally, like
the
to see,
construction of,
how
it
people
is.
react to you and
True. That's
everything. Like I
that's
would be
really
so
interesting.
curious.
So if you ever have like a genie come to you and ask for wishes to maybe give us that,
Definitely,
like,
and ensure I'm not stuck like that.
Exactly,
I don't want to be stuck like that.
I want to be only one day.
Literally one day.
One day,
and then I want to go back to. Let's be clear.
But you will show her. It's like, okay. And like a crop top, which would be fine. Actually, it would be like a real empowerment.
I think I'd be such an expressive, like, straight guy, you know? I'd be
cool,
like,
like,
so anyway. But yeah.
Anyway, thank you everyone.
Thank you,
Claire, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, love, for the topic. It was very good.
Yes,
very
thank
good.
you. And see you
see you next week. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.